You're listening to In Between Podcasts with Sarah and Celeste. Don't do life alone. Let's dive in together. Hello and welcome to In Between Podcasts. Today's episode is about boundaries. Boundaries, how it's biblical, how we've implemented boundaries in our own life, and
the importance of boundaries.
Yeah.
As far as your relationships go, like with your children, with your husband, with your family.
Yes.
And the importance of that. And that it's okay to have them.
Yeah. I think boundaries, a lot of people just see it as like a negative thing of like boundaries as in the sense of, oh, I'm just going to say no to everybody and I'm not going to do anything and that sort of thing. But the way like my counselor and like my parents like talk about boundaries is it's not a wall to protect you. It's not like these fortified like castle walls where you're like, oh, nobody can touch me. Like, it's not to just protect yourself, That's not healthy boundaries.
Right.
That's just not healthy at all, Boundaries is actually like a divider of this is Sarah's and this is mine. We're not meshed together.
Yeah.
And so it's actually like more like we're neighbors in a neighborhood and we have a fence to separate our yards. And I don't really go over to her yard unless if she invites me, and she don't come over to my yard unless if I invite her. And it's like this nice divider, And you can have great relationships with that divider,
Yeah.
And it keeps the relationship like healthy and like unresentful and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think it can be easy to, like, you have these boundaries set in place. I think it's easy for people to see them as like brick walls, rather than just like a little like picket fence.
Yeah.
And it's okay to have like boundaries that are like different from one another. Because like I may not see like Celeste's side and be like I'm not really dealing with that, so I don't know why that's your boundary. But that's not for me to question her boundaries.
Yeah.
In the sense, like, let's just say like I have a problem with like my kid having sugar, and Celeste doesn't have that problem, and she's like, that doesn't make sense. Be like, have respect for my boundaries.
Yeah.
Because I may not want sugar in my child's life until they're older.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's definitely like levels of boundaries, but like let's keep them healthy.
Yeah.
And if they're like to the extreme, like maybe like I don't know, let's have a talk about that. Or would you say that?
Yeah, I would say so. I think it all depends on like your relationship with that person, but regardless, you have to respect that person's opinion.
Yeah.
Like, you have to respect it, even if you don't like take it for yourself or understand it or whatever. Like, you have to be like, okay, that's the boundary you've set in place for our relationship.
Yeah.
So I'm going to respect it, even if I don't understand it sometimes.
Right.
And I think in some ways, like, you don't really have to explain yourself.
Yeah.
Unless if you want to, know? And that's true. Another boundary in and of itself. Like, if I say, no, I don't want my kid to have sugar, I don't have to go around explaining it to everybody.
Like, why not?
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make sense,
I can just be like, that's a decision I've made.
That's just what I want.
That's it. I don't have to go into the research or whatever made me get this decision,
Right.
Whatever it might be. It might not be sugar, but something else. Like, because we all make decisions based on the knowledge that we know, the knowledge that we've researched or whatever, the feeling that we get with certain situations. And so we've made these boundaries of like, I need this stability in my life of people aren't going to go this way or this way in my life, you know? And so you need that. And so you got to respect that, and you need to be okay to explain that sometimes and also say, no, that's just the decision I've made.
Yeah. So, in conclusion of what boundaries are, I would say they're like separate places, like where we live, let's just say on the fence line or whatever, like separate places, and like it's what we think or believe that is right for our family.
Yeah.
And then vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And we might have different boundaries, and that's okay.
Yeah.
We just are different people, and so we're going to have different boundaries and different experiences in our lives that have made us have those different boundaries. And so, yeah, that's important to just like, I know Celeste has these boundaries. I'm not going to overstep them. And if I want to like her to overstep in my boundaries, I'm going to ask her like, help me, or like, you know, like with the cleaning thing.
Yeah. And I think it's like interesting. I mean, because relationships, like Sarah, if you use the fence analogy in a neighborhood, Sarah might not feel like she needs a fence in a certain area in her life.
Yeah.
But I do. You know?
Right.
And so you're kind of like, oh, I could ask that, or I could go and do that.
Right.
But I don't. And so you have to respect that. And so like if it's a yard, like your yard's not going to overgrow into mine because I have a fence. Mine's not going to overgrow to yours. But if I'm like, hey Sarah, like I need help cleaning my house or something, or like or even just I'm baking a cake and I go over to Sarah and I'm like, I need help with this. Like, I need help with eggs. I don't have eggs. You're going to give me eggs, and then I'm going to go bake my cake. You know? If I have a situation in my life that I'm struggling with, I'm going to go to Sarah and be like, hey, Sarah, what do you think about this?
Right.
She's going to give me her opinion, and I'm going to go take that opinion and either take it and use what she said, or I'm going to analyze it and be like, is that biblical? Should I do that? Can I do that? You know, does that help the situation?
Yeah.
And then decide if I want to use that or not. You know?
And the boundary would be like, if she is not okay with talking about that, and I just like, I knew it. Like, I kind of like knew it. Like, it's kind of a touchy situation.
Yeah.
And I asked about it anyways, and I pushed on that subject. I think that is the boundary that doesn't need to be broken.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people see issues like that as like moral issues. Like, I think the only reasons you can step in and give your opinion when somebody hasn't asked, if it's like a moral or biblical issue.
Yes, if it's like not on following the lines of biblical like truth or whatever.
Yes, like if hypothetically, if somebody is like cheating on their husband. Yeah. That's all I can think of right now. If one of my friends is cheating on their husband and I know it, I'm going to call you out on it. Yes. If you didn't ask my opinion or whatever, I'm going to be like, I don't think that's right. I don't think you need to be doing that. Like, that's not okay.
Like, I don't agree with that.
I don't agree with that. That's biblically not sound. Like that's a no. Yes. You know? Or if somebody's like on drugs or alcohol abuse or something like that.
I see that something is different.
Yes.
And like I see that what you're doing pretty much.
And I think you can say that. I think you say that with love. Yes. Compassion. Grace.
Not anger.
Not anger. Not out of resentment or anything like that. No. No, you say it with love, compassion, grace, empathy, sympathy. Like,
there's definitely a wrong way to do it, and there's definitely a right way to confront somebody.
Absolutely.
If they're doing wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah, because the last thing you want to do is, especially as a Christian, I think a lot of Christians like to call out sin. And it's like, well, in the Bible it even says, like, fix your own issues before you go out and try to fix everybody else's. Like, that's not okay, you know? Yeah. But I do think as Christians we can say, that's not okay. I don't agree with that. And I don't think you should be doing that, you know? Because of biblical reasons. Like, you have factual, in the Bible it says, we do not need to be cheating on our husbands or substance abuse or, you know, things like that. Like, there's reasons why we say that, you know? It's not just like, oh, in my opinion, you don't need to be spanking your kid. And like, that's a moral issue. No, that's a boundary. Like, don't say that.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. I think that when we are parenting our children, and like, I set in place certain boundaries for my children, and like vice versa, like you do your own boundaries. I think it's easy to like say that my way is better than your way, you know? because of whatever it may be. But I'm like, Celeste, I don't think that was right or whatever. I don't know. I just think that we get caught up in our own boundaries that we're like, there should be the same because of this reason.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But as far as just like respecting your friends or your family members' boundaries, I just think that, there are certain things that you don't need to like step in and be like, that's not how you're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
Definitely like lines and like where's the fence, The fence needs to be in some places.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think too, we're talking about, okay, boundaries, okay, here's a fence. But what about the people pleasers? You know? People pleasers do not have boundaries. Yeah. They get pulled in literally every single direction and allow themselves to get pulled in every single direction because they are not okay with saying no. Yeah.
Do you think that's a big problem or just like something that can be like fixed or helped or?
Yeah, I think people can recover from being a people pleaser, I've actually heard of people being like, I'm recovering as a people pleaser, like I'm a recovery.
That's funny.
Because it is a big deal. And I think people who want to keep the peace in families and people that don't want to hurt anybody's feelings and want to be there for everybody struggle so bad with boundaries because they want to say yes to everything. Right. They're not comfortable with saying no. They're not comfortable with the confrontation that no might bring. If I say, no, Sarah, I can't do that, and then you're like, why? And I'm not comfortable and confident in telling you my why, or just being like, no. A people pleaser like can't do that.
Yeah, because they don't have boundaries themselves, right?
And I think most people pleasers, and I'm saying this because I have been a people pleaser, and then I've gone to the opposite extreme with my walled up and everything. Like I've lived in both extremes before, and neither one of them in my life, like if I was a people pleaser or with the walls up. Anxiety.
Are we talking about the concrete walls?
Yeah. Okay. Concrete walls, like
unhealthy
nobody's
boundaries
getting in
on both ends. Right?
Yeah, like trust issues. Yeah. Like nobody, you know. And I've lived in both extremes, and like the unhealthiness in both of those situations is so awful. Yeah. Like I was dealing with so much living as a people pleaser in this. You know? And now that I've finally, with a lot of help.
I was about to say, how do we get to this healthy boundary middle area from the extreme to the people pleasing?
A lot of practice.
Okay.
I think a lot of practice, and then a lot of
more like saying
letting go of controlling others.
Okay. Would you say that's like saying no as a people pleaser? Like, no, I actually can't do that. I need to do self-care instead. Or like, I need to do something else that's not necessarily that. And then with the walls up, you would say saying yes.
Yeah.
To necessarily things that aren't so like what you once were like on the fence, like that's a hard no, into more of a like, you know what? Like, it's actually okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, that might be just building relationships in a different sense, Like, let's say that there's this one person that you're just like, no with. And it's like, and then one day they've, come around to it. And it's more like, okay, maybe I'll let like one little thing come in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, I think
the relationship has changed, so you're like, your walls are coming down.
Well, I think most of the wall part has to do with yourself, not other people.
Okay.
Because you're trying to just protect yourself from everybody. Yeah. Even people that are healthy, you're like, no, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not going to go into a relationship with them because I'm going to get hurt or because of this. And so you don't ask them their opinion about anything. You like
because you're just scared of just being hurt or
being hurt or being disappointing somebody or something like that. So you just like close off.
I got you. Yeah.
And so neither one of those are healthy. I think the way it took me a while to understand that boundaries were actually healthy.
Yeah.
A very long while.
Okay.
Because I saw them as hurting people's feelings.
Oh.
Causing issues.
Yeah.
And I realized, though, if I hurt your feelings by saying no to something or by saying I can't do that or something like that, that's your problem. I cannot control how Sarah handles her emotions.
That's right.
All I can do is control mine. And I can speak with love, compassion, grace. And as long as I show respect and stuff, that's all I can do. And if you can't do that, then you have a boundary issue.
I was going to say, that's my problem.
Yeah, I mean, because you can't control a person getting their feelings hurt.
No,
as long as you spoke respectfully, with love, with grace.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
One scenario that we were talking about that, like, boundaries were in our relationship was one time Sarah asked me to babysit. And I hadn't seen my husband in several days. He had been working and then he was gone. And she asked me to babysit on one day that he was actually going to be home. And I was like, I really wanted to say yes. Yeah. My people pleasing was like, I really want, because her and her husband wanted to go on a date night. Yeah. And I mean, if you have kids, you're like, oh yeah, everybody has a date night.
And you have to plan for that date night. It's not just like, let's go on a date night tonight. It's like you actually have to plan.
Yeah. And so I was like, I really want to give Sarah that. Like, I know her and Nelson really need that time, you know. But also, in my own life, I needed that time with my own husband. Right. He hadn't been home, blah, blah, blah. And so she asked me that, and I was like, you know what? It's not within my means to say yes to this. I was going to be more exhausted. I wasn't going to be healthy because I hadn't talked to my husband in several days, you know, and I was needing that connection from him. And so I analyzed it, and I was like, is this something I can give to Sarah? Right. And the answer was no. And so I said,
that was fine.
I was like,
there was no hurt.
Yeah. But I said, no, I can't. Right. I can't that night. I was like, but if you want to change it to a different night that my husband's working or whatever, or gone, I was like, I would love to. You know? Because I didn't want to say no to, like, the whole situation because I did want to babysit. Right. I just couldn't give it on that night. You know?
Which we ended up taking her with us that night. I think we still went and we took her with us. Which it wasn't bad at all. Yeah. So,
but you took the no and was like...
Yes.
Respected it and was like, you know what? If Celeste could, she would. Yeah. You know?
I didn't take it personally. Yeah. I didn't take it like, oh, she just is hating, babysitting, friendly. Yeah. I didn't take it personally.
Or even just being like, oh, she gets time with her husband and I don't, and she doesn't have kids yet, you know, and that sort of thing. Yes. Because you can overstep boundaries and get resentful in relationships by not respecting the no's or the yeses or whatever.
Yeah, that's a big thing too. And I think that you know, having boundaries is okay. And that we need to, like, realize that for ourselves so we can set those boundaries that need to be there. Yeah. Because if you're scared to set boundaries, like, things aren't gonna, your mind's not gonna be okay. You're gonna be in an unhealthy place. Yeah. And it's like communicating that with your husband or, like, whoever that may be, and, like, why we're setting these boundaries and, like, the need for the boundary. Yeah. And it's like, it's just not a healthy place, and, like, or, you know, whatever that may be. And so it is okay to set boundaries. Don't feel pressured to change your boundary if that is what you're set. Like, if this is where you're at, do not, like, have leeway with it in a sense. Yeah. You know, if someone's, like, questioning you, like, don't, like, back down and be like, oh, you're right, that shouldn't be my boundary. Like, I shouldn't have said it that way, whatever. But, like, no. Like, it is okay. It shouldn't be, like, a big thing where you're like, oh, like, her boundaries are stupid. Like, and you shouldn't feel, like, ashamed of your boundaries. Yeah. Even though, just because ours are different. Yeah. Well, and I think yours are different from everybody else's, you know?
And I think, too, when you're setting boundaries, like, you do need to talk to somebody, like, a person maybe your husband or somebody in your life that you can trust. Maybe somebody that's not even like really entangled into your life.
Yeah.
That can give you good insight to like look and be like, yeah, I don't think you have boundaries in this area with this person. You're like, I need to do that or whatever. You know, you can get good insight. But we were also talking about, okay, biblical, like where in the Bible does it talk about boundaries? In Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
There were boundaries. Adam and Eve could eat any fruit, anything in the garden except that one tree.
Yes.
One tree.
Like and that was the boundary.
God gave them that boundary.
Yep.
You can do this, but you cannot do this. That was the boundary. And what did they do? They went and did that. And God told them what the consequence was going to be. And that was going to be death, you know?
Yeah.
And it ended up being death, not like in the literal sense of like you die right then. Right. It ended up being sin coming into the world and the death because we don't get to live forever anymore. You know? And so they ended up getting kicked out of the garden. And so when you set boundaries with people, it is okay to have consequences. It is okay. Yeah. And especially with people that don't really respect your boundaries. Like, in the sense of Sarah coming over and she like cleans my house or something. And I'm like, I don't need you to do that anymore. And I'm not going to invite you over if you keep on coming over and cleaning my house because it makes me feel like a bad wife or something like that. I just came up with that.
Yeah.
You know? But the consequence is limited time with me now. Yeah. Because she couldn't respect.
Because I'm stepping on her like toes and like doing things that I shouldn't be doing over there.
Yeah. And I think it's okay to have those consequences and to understand that if you keep on overstepping people's boundaries, you're probably going to end up with consequences in the relationship. The person's not going to want you around as much. They're going to quit asking you your opinion. Yeah. They're not going to invite you to things. You're going to get a limited access to their life because you keep on disrespecting them and not showing them love in the way that they asked.
Right.
This is my boundary.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I'm thinking, like, there's just a bunch of things right now. So just, bear with me. So, like, I don't want to hinder our relationship, okay, at all. Because, like, we already are, like, you live far away from me, whatever. And, like, let's say that's just bothering me, okay? Whatever our boundary. What's like, your boundary that is the invisible boundary. Like, there's no, like, our scenario boundaries or whatever. Okay. Like, there's something that I'm like, I just can't get past this boundary that Celeste has set, right? And, like, and I don't want to step on your toes and hurt your feelings or anything, right? So it's like, how do I deal with that on my own? And, like, I feel like if you don't deal with it, it's, like, going to happen again. You know what I'm saying? Like, you
get your feelings hurt that I have a boundary?
Right, yes. Okay. And it's like, I don't understand this boundary or whatever. So it's like, how do I fix that in my own self?
Well, I think you can, in some scenarios, ask, why do you have this boundary? Okay. And if I feel comfortable enough to tell you why. Yeah. And, I mean, if you set a boundary, you should have a why as to why you set it. Yes. It's not just like, oh, because I feel like it. No, it's because you have a reason why. Yeah. And Sarah is a good friend, so of course I'm going to respect her enough to tell her why. You know?
And I guess if I'm wrestling that, like, in my own, like, like, why is this a boundary for her and it's not for me? Like, I don't see that as a big deal. I think that it's like wrestling with my heart in a sense. And, like, I think it's like trying to, like, realize to have respect. You know what I'm saying? Boundary. Yes. Yeah. Like, I have to find out a way to get respect for her boundaries. And so if that's through prayer, like, Lord, just let me see, or, like, what she's dealing with, or, like, why she set that boundary. Yeah. Or, like, help me understand her boundaries. I think that's a huge one.
Yeah.
Because, like, you're like, why would I ask God to help me with that? Because I'm just so mad about that boundary. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, and it's okay to pray for that. I think we need to better ourselves constantly.
Yeah.
And so if I have a problem that's, like, making me, like, crazy, that I'm, like, I keep stepping on her boundaries, and, you know, she's putting up these walls, whatever. I'm like, how can we get these walls back down where she can trust me again? You know?
Yeah.
And so if that's through prayer or through whatever steps, like, I'm sorry, Celeste, like, I shouldn't be stepping on your boundaries like that. I have respect for those boundaries, and I expect you to have respect for mine.
Yeah.
So.
And I think it's just that understanding of respect. Because, like, also, I respect her as a person, you know? And even if I don't understand your boundary, I respect you enough to be like, I don't understand it. I don't really understand the why.
Right,
know?
Yeah.
But I'm going to respect it because I respect you.
Yeah. And then
as
we
a
just
person,
move on.
And you have to move on.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously pray about it, you know, and maybe God
if
can
you're
give
struggling with it.
Yeah, and God can give you some insight, obviously. And maybe even just like help you let go of it. But most of the time when we're stepping over each other's boundaries, it's control. You want to control the relationship. And so if you're dealing with not understanding a person's boundaries or whatever, ask God to like help you release control of that specific area in your relationship.
Yeah.
You know? That might be an area that like you really want to be involved in, you know? Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty passionate about like parenting and stuff, and like I really love to like give people insight, you know? But I've had to let that go in a lot of situations because people don't ask my opinion, you know? And and especially when I was a preschool teacher, I had a lot of practice in like how to positively say things to kids to get them to do things faster, basically, or to do things.
Right.
And I had learned a lot of tricks. And when I see other parents doing things, I'm like, you could have said this instead of that, and they would have gone and done it right then, you know, or whatever. And so it's like, I had to, like, a lot of times remove myself from the situation so I wouldn't overstep in people's areas because that's not healthy, you know? That's not okay for me to do. And so I would remove myself and be like, Teacher Celeste is about to come out, you know? And I would just, like, walk away.
Run away.
You know? Because I just didn't want to overstep those boundaries because I did respect those people and I did respect those parents, you know?
Yeah.
And they're doing the best that they can, you know?
Yeah. I would say definitely, like, the respect thing's huge. And also, like, let's say that you are... Okay, so this is one of my, like, things that I cannot stand. I guess it'd be a pet peeve. I don't know what it is. So, like, you know the little dropping of the hints that people will do if they don't agree or, like, you should be doing this type of thing. So I'm thinking of our lawns, right? I'm looking at your lawn. I'm like... Celeste, like, that looks like that bush needs to be pruned, or like looks like kind of like in a negative sense though, like you're not doing your job, that bush needs to be pruned, or that needs to be trimmed over there, and you didn't do it right, or like whatever. The little drop hints are like what make me like, ooh, like cringe and like I'm about to lose it, you know?
Well, I mean, it's disrespectful.
Yes.
And it's so disrespectful to the other
so
person.
Definitely like watch what you're saying. I just be aware of like what you're saying and like maybe I shouldn't have said that. Like, because I saw the way that her face just like changed, and like it's almost like you kind of want to say it because you're like, ooh, like, but then it's like reality. Like I shouldn't have said that. Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I think it's easy to nitpick.
Yes.
Other people and be like, I mean, even our husbands, like, you didn't do the dishes? Like, why didn't you do the dishes? You know, it's very easy to just nitpick a person and be like, I just don't think that you should do it that way. I mean, if we're using like a neighborhood and yards, like, hey Sarah, when you gonna cut your grass? You know, I noticed it was over there getting a little long, you know, or
that's bad. Like,
and then it's like, hey Sarah, when are you gonna take care of your kids' tantrums? You know, like when are you gonna do that?
You're making me like.
All this is fake. She's over
this
here
is
cringing for no reason. I'm like coming
Just-
up with scenarios that are not
just
even
like
close to
imagining
being
like
true.
you saying that though is just like.
Yeah,
Oh
you
my
can't
gosh.
do that. Like, that's
Yeah.
not welcome, and that's really not going to help the
It's
relationship.
not going to make me like her
No,
at all, actually.
no,
It's going to
you're
make
gonna
me want
resent
to
me.
avoid her. And, like,
Yeah.
I'm not going outside and meeting her at that fence no more.
She's going to be hiding behind the curtain and
be like,
I can't stand that neighbor over there. You know?
Literally.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you want to have healthy relationships with people, you cannot say those things.
Yes.
Unless if they ask. Like, unless
Yes.
Sarah comes to me and is like, hey, my yard's kind of getting a little long and I need a little help with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, I'll come
like,
over.
can you keep my kids while I just cut my grass?
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
Literally.
Or, hey, Celeste, these tantrums are getting on my nerves. Like, do you have any tips for it? Or,
what do I need to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and so, or even just like, I need self-care before I, like, deal with this tantrum, issue or whatever. Like,
yeah.
You have to wait for that person to welcome you and to share your opinions,
Yes. I guess it's kind of like having a gate on that fence that's in between us.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, am I pushing through that gate or am I holding that gate open for my friend to come through?
Absolutely.
So I think that's like the main thing.
Are they welcoming your opinion? Or are they like, why are you giving it? Because the gate is locked. You're like climbing over trying to tell me
trying to do everything to get you out of my lawn. Yeah. Like, I'm putting traps out.
Like rat traps?
Like spikes. If you're crossing that boundary, you're going to get hurt. Yeah. That's what that is.
Yeah. Or just you're going to experience the consequences of a relationship. Yes. I'm not going to want to be around you. But yeah. Yeah. I think boundaries definitely can have a negative, people look at it as a negative thing.
I think so.
But most people that look at it as a negative thing are typically not very healthy with boundaries. Yes. Because you truly don't understand how they can benefit your life and set you up really for success in all of your relationships. Yes. Because resentment doesn't start building. Respect is always there, you know.
And fun. Like, I think it makes it more fun. Like, when you're respecting other people's boundaries. Like, there's no, like, stepping on anybody's toes. Like,
but you want to hang out with that person and you're not worried.
Like, what are they going to say?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think when we look at our own life for boundaries, we really need to ask ourselves questions. Yes. Are we setting confident in our boundaries?
Are we setting healthy boundaries?
Healthy. And also, I mean, if you're wondering if they're healthy, go to the Bible. Yes. Go to the Bible. Maybe ask somebody
that's like your mentor.
Yeah, almost. A mentor, somebody that can really like look at your life and not be entangled into it. I'm talking like a friend outside of it, you know.
Like not your family members.
Yeah, typically not a family member. That can give you good insight. Because I think we can always look at somebody else and be like, oh, they don't have boundaries in this area. But it's hard to look at yourself and understand where you might not have boundaries and stuff. Yes. And so it's good sometimes to ask, hey, where's this area in my life that you think I should grow in, you know, in boundaries. And so definitely ask somebody and read your Bible and see what the Bible says about boundaries.
Do you respect other people's boundaries? And if not, how can you? Like, how can we start respecting someone's boundaries that we don't agree with?
Yeah. And I think if you're in a relationship with somebody, boundaries aren't very, like, clearly talked about, you know? Or, like, if I'm always bringing up like, how to parent or whatever, and Sarah's having an issue with that, like, she can say, hey, I think this should be a boundary in our relationship. Yeah. You know?
That's a good way to put it.
For me, if I'm analyzing our relationship, I'm like, hey, does it bother you that I always bring up how to parent or, like, how to do this? And she might be like, yeah, it kind of does. Yeah. Well, we need to set a boundary there. And that's healthy conversations happening to help the relationship.
Yeah.
Keep growing.
Her and her research mind. Like, I don't agree with that. No, I'm just kidding.
I typically don't share with her all my research stuff that
like, if you were to tell me all your research, I'd just be like, that's great. And then be like, can you believe it? I'm just kidding.
I
but more like,
don't, unless if she asks, or it's like a little tidbit of something. Like, hey, did you hear about this? And then she's like,
no.
No. And then I'm
but
like,
you can tell me about it.
Yeah.
I'll listen, but I might not take her advice or do the things that she's saying. Absolutely. And that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So,
definitely respect and ask God about how you need to set boundaries in your own life, and
and don't get discouraged about your boundaries.
Yeah, and if you're a people pleaser, practice no.
Yes.
Practice no.
If your walls are up, practice yes. Or
practice trust. And get around some safe people that you can trust and
pray.
Yeah.
For the walls to come down.
Yeah.
And have a little picket fence.
Yeah.
Because that looks better anyways.
Yeah.
Than a wall.
Okay, Sarah, are you giving your opinion?
I'm just saying. I'm just kidding.
Okay. Well, it was great talking with y'all about boundaries. If y'all have any insight, please share it below. We always want to hear from y'all. So, till next week. Thanks for growing with us in life's in-between messy moments. Don't stress too much about missing next week's episode at Monday at 4 p.m. Hit that subscribe button so you won't miss it. We'll see you next week.